Hi, and welcome to Living Waters Wesleyan Church. Last week we looked at the change curve and the stages that people go through as they learn to live to accept changes in their life. And that can be true for massive changes that have been thrust upon us, such as going into isolation at the moment. But it can be also true for everyday things like starting a new job, retiring, having a new family member born or get married into the family, the death of a family member, divorce, moving house, starting a new school, moving to a new town. And as we looked at those first 10 chapters of Exodus, and we see how the Israelites coped with those changes to what was happening with them. Today I want to continue following the Israelites as they set out on their journey to become God's people. Now you would think that after 430 years of being slaves, of serving other people, of having to endure all the plagues that God sent upon the Egyptians, that it'd be time for them to be able to sit back and have a little bit of a break. How about a long overdue holiday by the beach? But no, that wasn't the plan. I'm reading to you today from Exodus 13 verses 17 to 22. It says, "When Pharaoh finally let the people go, God did not leave them along the main road that runs through Philistine territory, even though that was the shortest route to the Promised Land. God said, if people are faced with a battle, they might change their minds and return to Egypt. So God led them in a roundabout way through the wilderness towards the Red Sea. Thus the Israelites left Egypt like an army ready for battle. The Israelites left Succoth and camped at Etham on the edge of the wilderness. The Lord went ahead of them. He guided them during the day from a pillar of cloud, and he provided light at night with a pillar of fire. This allowed them to travel day or by night. And the Lord did not remove the pillar of cloud or the pillar of fire from its place in front of the people. Instead of leading the people on the shortest route possible, God took them the long way round." Now, why would God do that? Isn't the idea to get these people from Egypt into the Promised Land, the land that was flowing with milk and honey, so that they could rest and relax? If they had taken the shortest route to the Promised Land, they could have been there in just over a week. But God didn't take them that way. He took them the long way round. And if we look at Numbers 33, it gives us a really detailed description of where the people went. So Numbers 33, chapters 1 and 2 says, "This is the route that the Israelites followed as they marched out of Egypt under the leadership of Moses and Aaron. At the Lord's direction, Moses kept a written record for their progress. These are the stages of the march, identified by the different places where they stopped along the way." Now, I don't want to read all of Numbers 33, but I want you to hear a little bit of it, because as you do, you're going to start hearing some of the phrases that are continually repeated. So starting from verse 5, it says, "After leaving Ramses, the Israelites set up camp at Succoth. Then they left Succoth and camped at Etham on the edge of the wilderness. They left Etham and turned back towards Pi-hahiroth, opposite Baal-zephon, and camped near Megal. Then if we drop down to 10, it says they left Elim and camped by the Red Sea. They left the Red Sea and camped in the wilderness of Sin. They left the wilderness of Sin and camped at Dopka." Did you notice the pattern? There are two phrases that are constantly repeated. They left and they camped at. You know, years and years ago, before we had kids, Andrew and I went on a holiday with some friends of ours to Cairns in Australia. We drove from Toowoomba up to Cairns, which is 2 full days of driving. And when we got there, we didn't stay in one place, but we drove around. We drove up to the Atherton Tableland, and we'd stay for a day or two up there and have a look all around there. And then we'd drive up to Daintree and we'd have a look there. And then we started coming down again. And I remember we got to Ellie Beach. And we spent a day out on the Whitsunday Islands, and the next day we were supposed to be going to Rockhampton and going to have a look at the lava caves there. But we were really sick of packing up and unpacking. And we decided that rather than drive the 5.5 hours to Rockhampton, that we were just going to drive the 12 hours and get home to Toowoomba. Now, I want you to think about that. We were in cabins. We didn't have to pitch our tent. We didn't have to pack up all our goods and chattels. We didn't have animals that we had to feed along the way. We might have had to strip a bed and pack up the few things that we had. But I want you to imagine how the Israelites did this, packing up their entire camps, their entire tents, their families, everything they owned, all their animals, and moving 41 times. That is a huge job to get 1 million people packed and on the move with everything that they owned and all their animals. That's a lot of change, a lot of transition, lots of disorientation. And here's the thing, most people don't like change. They don't like transition and that sense of disorientation. In fact, I would go to say as far to say that our culture today thrives on avoidance of pain and hurt and loss. We do whatever we can do to avoid it. So at the moment we have people rioting in America to allow their workplaces to open. Why? Because they don't like the pain and hurt and loss that they are experiencing. Now, I'm not saying that they're not going through hard times. They are going through really hard times. But sometimes we have to go through difficult circumstances. A quick fix is not the right fix. We want God to initiate change and complete the transition for us all in one step. But sometimes God takes us through the wilderness to get us to where He wants us to be. And it's in those in-between spaces of time that God shapes us into the people that He wants us to become. The journey that He took the Israelites on had lots of very high highs and lots of very low lows. And that was going to be a very hard journey through the wilderness. So why would God take them the long way round? Well, verse 17 says this, because God knew that if the people faced a really hard time when they first left Egypt, that they might turn around and run back to being slaves. The Philistines were a strong and mighty race, and they held that pathway between Egypt and Israel. And God knew that if the people of Israel were not ready to come up against such fierce opponents, they needed some molding. They needed some shaping. They needed some teaching first. So He took them the long way round. Have you ever considered that if you're going through a tough time, that maybe God is actually saving you from an even tougher time? Just like the Israelites might have complained as they were in the middle of the wilderness. God, we don't like this. And God's actually going, this is actually better than going past the Philistines. But even more than that, God had lessons that He wanted to teach the Israelites on the way that couldn't be learnt in just 1 week. It needed time. God's purpose was not just to make their life easier, but to turn this mob into a special nation. And to do that, they needed to be molded and shaped. And the lessons that He taught them along the way were not just lessons that He taught them on the road, but they were lessons that He taught as they were stopped along the way. Now let's just turn this metaphor of being in a wilderness back into our lives for a moment. If you're anything like me, when I go through a difficult time in my life, I normally plead with God, get me out of here now. I don't like pain. I don't like sorrow. I don't like confusion. My theory is just let's move through this desert as quickly as I can and get out the other side. But what if God's purpose is not to make our lives easier, but to make our souls stronger. Let me say that again. What if God's purpose is not to make our lives easier, but to make our souls stronger? What if he's saying, you have lessons that you need to learn while we're camped here? We don't have to stay here forever. God moves us through the wilderness step by step, and he has us camped in some places for certain periods of time. Sometimes it might be only a night. Sometimes it's a week. Sometimes it's a couple of months. But there are important lessons for you to learn there. You know, when I look back on my life, many of the important lessons that God has to teach me have not been learnt through the relaxing on the beach. They've been learnt when the going was hard and tough. They've been learnt when my soul has been wrestling with God and there are no easy answers. Now, I'm not going to share all my answers with you today. Rather, I want you to think through your own lives, and I have an activity that's going to help you do this. I want you to take a piece of paper and a pencil. On that blank piece of paper, draw a line that's going to represent your life. This line might have ups and downs, go back and forth, wander around in circles, be jagged and curved. But that's okay. You're creating a representation of your life. At points along the way, place notions that represent significant events, changes, and experiences, encounters with God, or other people that have altered or shaped the direction of your life. You might want to draw symbols at significant points along the line. You might want to draw a tree to symbolize growth, or a cross to symbolize loss. Maybe a rain cloud for a really sad time, or a sun for a happy time. When we get to the end of your line, place an X to represent that this is where you are right now in your life. Look back over your line and reflect on your life's directions and turning points. Make notes of the feelings that you've had that as you reflect back on your life. Also take note of anything that you might want to say to God about what you see in your life, especially when you are experiencing tough times. Think about the ways that God may have been at work in your life during those times. Continue on from the X with a dotted line, showing where you would like your life to go from here. And then take a few minutes and talk to God about this future direction.